Ghosts, where do I start and where do I finish? I was asked to make a contribution to this culture night talk on ghosts. And first thing I thought was, what do I know about ghosts? Not a lot, really, but I have a story to tell, and it's more about spirits, I suppose. But my earliest memories of ghosts and the possibility of being scared by one goes back to when I was very young. I was small enough to be able to sit on the carrier of my mother's bike. And every Sunday evening she'd go down to her home place down in Killaroo, down to Woods's, just to do a bit of rooting around the house and helping out and that. And I'd go with her. And I was very small because she was still fit to carry me on the carrier of the bike. So we'd go down in daylight on Sunday evening around 4 or 5 o'clock. And we'd come home then around 11:30. And it'd be pitch dark, bar on a starry moonlit night, stars in the sky. She'd have an old lamp on the front of the bike to show you where the potholes in the road were. But she was petrified of ghosts. And obviously, if your parent is petrified of something, you're going to be petrified as well, because what else do you do in a situation like that? But she had a firm belief that any house that was derelict, where somebody had died, she had a firm belief that there was a ghost at it, that it was haunted. You know, no ifs or buts or maybes. It was definitely haunted. So on the route home, 3 miles? On a bike in the middle of the night. But she always liked to get home, if possible, before midnight, because whatever chance you had of not seeing anything before midnight, you had no chance after midnight. You were in trouble if you didn't get home before midnight. But anyhow, on that road home, you came down the lane and out Killaroo Lane, out to the main road. And there was 4 houses that were derelict along the way that had to be passed. The first one was just on the left-hand side before you turn up to Durnakesh School. And I think it was McDonald's was the name of that house. I think the ruins of it may still be there. And obviously, back in the mid-60s, it was derelict. Somebody had died and passed on. So that was the first one we had to pass. Now, when you were passing by these houses, you daren't look in. You had to keep your eyes straight ahead. If you looked in, you'd certainly see something. We turned left up past Durnakesh School, through the old school cross, heading on up then, and there was another old house in on the left. I think Jerome Riley has the farm now. And I think it was Jem Riley's was the name of the place. But in my recollection and in my parents' time, all that house, it was only known as Jem Booze's. So I suppose that nickname probably gives us a clue as to what Jem's favourite pastime was. But anyhow, that was derelict. There was old crumbling walls. There was a good orchard which we used to raid coming from school. And so you had to get by that. And again, you didn't look in. Then on further along the road, and this was the more, I suppose, scary one, because we came to a stretch on the road and there was a well along the road. It was just near the bottom of what was Jerry McCabe's Lane. And both my father and my uncle Dennis had a story from that well. And they recounted that both of them, they were going home on bikes one night, back up to Killyclawn, where they lived along the road. And I think it was Dennis, he was the first one to go up the road. And he claimed that as he was passing by this well, he saw a man approaching and he thought he recognised the man and was getting off the bike to say hello. And as his foot touched the ground, the man turned into a black dog. So he legged it home faster than his bike wheels could carry him and was in a bit of a state of cold sweat when he arrived home. My father was coming up the road later on a bike, and he claims that as he was passing this well, this black dog with fiery red eyes just brushed very close up against him. And of course, he got a bit frightened and off he went, hell for leather, home. And that was their story. And, you know, they weren't the type of men who'd make up stories like that just for the crack, you know. So we had to pass this well. And whatever about not looking into the houses that were in a bit off the road, there was no escaping this well along the road and the black dog that might be lingering around. So if he was there, you were going to see him and he'd see you. But we had to pass that well, and we passed it many's the night and didn't see anything. Passed it many's the night later myself on a bike and in a car. Didn't see anything. But still to this day, I always think about that story, and I'd still be reluctant now. Be reluctant to sort of walk past it in the dark of the night now. That was fine. On up the road then, Fitch's Hollow, Fitch's Bray, if anyone knows that road. There's an old house there, an old two-storey house surrounded by trees, and it looks eerie. If you were ever making a horror movie locally, yeah, it would be a perfect location. And we had to pass it. It was Fitch's, Fitzpatrick's. Benny Fitch and Joe Fitch lived there. My father remembered them, I didn't. But it was long derelict, so we had to pass it. And there was a steep brae, so you had to get off the bike to walk up the brae. So there was no running away or sprinting away from ghosts if they appeared. You had to get off and walk, so they'd have you caught up in no time. So we had to, and again, many's the night we went up, and many's the night I went up later. Didn't see nothing. Then we had to turn in left across the fields to take a shortcut home, and there was an old house. There was an old gentleman still living there, Tommy Francie, he was still alive. And passed through that, but it was dark and be bushes and all sorts of stuff. But we made it home anyway, unscathed, but uneasy. And the feeling of getting home and into your own house was great, you know, getting into your own bed and having a roof over your head, and that feeling of safety when you arrive home into your own shelter, something that I suppose everyone feels. So that was my earliest experiences of ghosts and the possibilities of ghosts. And in those days, in your imagination, a ghost was something white and sort of transparent and slippery, and that hung around in dark lanes and bushes and amidst the walls of old derelict houses. And that was about it, you know. What harm could they do you? Not a lot. People would say years ago, you know, they went Caelian and telling ghost stories in houses, and then they'd come out into the dark night and sure, bushes were moving and anything that rustled or moved in the edge was a ghost, or if they heard a fox crying, it was the banshee and stuff like that. So that was my earliest experiences of ghosts. But the story I'm going to tell, it's fairly short, but the irony of this story is it happened when I was in bed. I wasn't out on a dark country road on a moonlight night, afraid of meeting dogs or seeing white things moving in ditches. The irony of this story is that it happened while I was asleep in a bed in a house. I was working on Big M Radio in Castleblaney back in the 80s, 1986, 87. Big building in the middle of the town. It's a 3-story building. And we were on the top floor. And I used to stay there overnight because I did a program early in the morning from 7 to 9, a breakfast show. And I also did a program from 9 to 12 at night. So I used to stay over. There was no point in going home and having to be back in and on the air again for 7. So I used to sleep over in this room. And next to the room was the studio, and off that there was a little office, and there was a bathroom and all that. And there was a couch we pulled out and slept on it. It was grand. Anyhow, one night I was sound asleep and I was in a dream. And in the dream I could see the room where I was sleeping and the door off to the little room where the office was. And from that room, and this is in the dream, from that room I could hear this awful screaming. A woman screaming, and it was blood-curdling scream. I've never witnessed, and hope I never do, anyone being murdered or tortured, but this screaming must have been what it would be like if you were being tortured or murdered. And in the dream I heard this screaming, and in the dream, as I lay there in the bed, I froze. I just froze with fear. I couldn't move for I don't know how many seconds. I wasn't counting seconds. Could have been 10 seconds. I don't know. But I was frozen with a cold fear and couldn't move. So dreams are dreams. I woke up. Sure, you pass no remarks on these things. We all have mad, crazy dreams most of the time. They don't make head nor tail or mumbo jumbo. So anyhow, a few weeks later, I'm there in the bed, I'm wide awake. And suddenly this cold sensation comes over me. And it was exactly the same cold sensation of paralysis that I experienced in the dream. And for, again, a number of seconds, I was just frozen there in the bed and couldn't move. There was a coldness and this fear. And yeah, it passed on then and moved on to wherever, and then it was then I linked. I said, that's exactly the same sensation I experienced in the dream, and I'm experiencing that very same sensation lying here in the bed before I've gone to sleep. So you sort of get a bit uneasy, and from then on I'd leave the bathroom light on and the door slightly ajar to allow a shaft of light into the room so that they weren't there in pitch darkness. And we had a radio there as well, and I'd leave the radio on, playing low. And the same experience, it happened 2 or 3 more times while I was there. Maybe there might be a period of 6 weeks, 2 months in between. But it happened twice more before the radio station wound up. The pirate radio stations had to close. December 1988, they had to close. So we were out of there by December 1988. But the same sensation happened on 2 more occasions, and you just felt, every time it happened, you felt that bit more anxious, listen, I'm not enjoying this. And as I said, it happened. There was a shaft of light from the bathroom. The radio was on. this cold sensation moved through the room, and I was paralyzed with fear for whatever length of time. It wasn't that long enough, but. And so as each time it happened, the more anxious you got and said, I don't really want to be here. What I came to the conclusion was, it was a very old building. I always remember one of the guys working there, I think he had slept there too before me, and he made a casual remark once that there's something very strange about this room. I believe it was an old Masonic hall at one time. And it's a very old building, probably goes back to the original building of the town, and that. It could be 300 years or more old, so God knows what went on. Something not nice happened there, and I believe in spirits, there has to be spirits, The earth is very old. A lot of people have walked these fields and lanes and worked and fought and died and starved and persecuted and God knows what. So, sure, yeah, it was some sort of restless spirit still lingering within that building. That was my experience of, it's more of a, I don't know, supernatural thing. But I can vouch for that. I'm not making it up. That's 100% true. So, as I remarked to Gemma when she asked me to do this and tell a story, I sort of said back to her, well, you better get a good night's sleep before the ghost story night, because you mightn't sleep too well the night after it. So that's it. And thanks for your time, your invitation, and I hope you get something out of it. Thank you.